Salmon. That was the last meal Nolan Xavier Wells ever cooked. He made it himself, in his mother's kitchen, on the 3rd of July. Then he packed a bag and left to stay the night with friends because there was a boat waiting in the morning. He was 3 weeks from his 19th birthday. He played wide receiver at Southwest Mississippi Community College, and he didn't drive, which mattered more than anyone realized at the time. His friends picked him up. Every time. So routinely that by their own telling it had stopped being a favor years earlier. It was just what they did. Remember that. Because 30 hours later, those same friends would pull away from an island without him. He never came home. 6 weeks have passed. And here is the part that should stop you. Christine and Elmore Wansley still have not been told how their son died. Not because the answer doesn't exist. The state medical examiner finished the autopsy in early July. That report is written, it is complete, it sits in a file in Jackson County, sealed, and it will stay sealed until a grand jury is seated to read it. So the family paid for their own examination out of pocket. What came back was one word where they needed a paragraph. Undetermined. I'm not going to tell you I know what happened out there. I don't. But not having the answer isn't the same as the answer not existing, and that distinction is the whole story now. Cases like this stay open for exactly one reason. People keep asking after the news cycle moves on. That's what this channel is for. Subscribe to Case Desk, because on August 10th, 3 of the young men who were on that boat sat down in front of a camera with their attorney, and what he said in that room would either close the most contested stretch of this timeline or open it wider than it's ever been. You're about to hear it in their own words, all of it. And then we're going to hold every claim in it up against the record and walk through the questions that our never once touched. Stay with me to the end of this one, because the part that matters most isn't in the interview at all. It's in what came back from the autopsy table.
Obviously, before this happened, I would assume you're living a regular life, young guys being in college, having a typical experience. Then you lose your friend.
I think ever since it happened, my life just hit like a hole. Even going out, we're always paranoid somebody's gonna see us, get spotted, try to beat us up potentially, or even worse.
You just met these young men more recently. And are you confident that these young men had nothing to do with it? We have Ed Pausick, Warren, Jax, and then we have Morgan here. And so I talked to Warren last time I was here. We had a really deep conversation, and I'm glad that we were able to get other perspectives now that we have Ed here. Ed is a defamation attorney. And I want to start with you, Ed. Why did you choose to work with the boys? What is your plans? What do you expect to get out of working with them? What's your expectations when it comes to defamation?
Well, I think an injustice in one place is an injustice everywhere. I hate lying. I care about the truth, but most of all, it's the actual people who are involved here. So first of all, I just want to say Tyler Cox really welcomed me here. My co-counsel, he's an incredible human being and he's an incredible attorney. And then after that, I had an opportunity to meet these incredible young men. And I just got to say, these guys are unbelievable. Warren, Jackson, Morgan, they're just beautiful people. They're really decent human beings. They're just great people. And, that's why I'm here, because I want to help great people. And this is a very sad situation, but it's also a very human situation. And it's a tragedy. So
you guys have, obviously before this happened, I would assume you're living a regular life, young guys being in college, having a typical experience. Then you lose your friend, Nolan. And after that, what has life been like for you guys?
I think ever since it happened, my life just hit like a hole. It just stopped. And we just got to live day by day from now on. I could say definitely a whole flip upside down for our lives. It's even going out, we're always paranoid somebody's going to see us, get spotted, try to beat us up potentially, or even worse. We're really just trying to stay low key and not go out as much or anything like that. Yeah.
It's been hard because my friends and I are people. We like to be out and hang out outside of our friend group, and not being able to like go certain places or, walk around in public because our head's always on a swivel. It's really affected all of us. I mean, especially in like my family's standpoint, my safety comes first. My friends and family safety come first too. And it's been really hard because I'm worried about like my family as well with, me. And it's hard, but we're just going day by day and, just trying to get through every day,
Can you give me some examples of what has happened? Have you guys have had things happen online, threats online? Have you guys have any examples of people accosting you or anything like that?
Oh yeah. We have had countless death threats online, been spotted. I'll let you elaborate more on that. Being spotted.
People have obviously just pointed us out. I mean, as a group and even on a one-on-one setting, I think, it's really just like awkward because I don't want to talk about this. And I know my friends don't want to talk about this any more than we need to. We're still mourning one of our best friends' death and, it's hard to speak about it when, like sometimes we just need some alone time or sometimes we just need to, lay back and not be around all this. And, I've been called out in public and I haven't been in public that much. I know my friends have had encounters in public. The threats have been insane from, my stepmom and my dad, my mom, everyone included, like even my brothers and my sisters. And, it's just hard. I mean, it's unbelievable where like this has been taken to and the level where this is at.
When you say you've been called out in public, can you give me an example of like, what do you mean? People are threatening you with weapons. People are, not allowing you, denying you service. Cause I heard that Trayston, he went to a corner store and they told him his money is not good there. They wouldn't even let him buy Gatorade.
Yeah.
Are you experiencing things like that or something totally different?
Right. I wouldn't say like that. I think I haven't been denied, anything, but like Trayston, it's hard to hear from a good friend of mine that he's getting denied a Gatorade and a Red Bull before work and having to, like, he calls me, he's like, dude, you won't believe what just happened. He got called out at Walmart. Someone called him out at Walmart and was like asking him all these questions and trying to press him about it. And it's crazy to me. Like, we live in a very tight knit community and for people to, push back and say these things when they know what Ocean Springs is like, it's really hard. And I mean, I haven't had many personal encounters, but I know being around the guys and stuff like that, they have, so.
And Ed, as an attorney that's representing these boys, I mean, what does that make you feel like? Do you feel like you got a good case here or, what's your perspective in that? Because, people are online and obviously they know who you are. Obviously they know you represented Donald Trump in some pretty high profile cases. And so now that you've joined, or at least now you work for the young men here, you hear them say things like they've been accosted, they've been, threatened online. Does that make your case a greater case, or how do you work within what's happening to these young men?
Well, unfortunately, I wish there was no case. I wish this hadn't happened. But unfortunately, because these things did happen, there is a case, and now there's multiple cases. And I'm going to tell you something. If you're out there and you lied about these guys, you lied about my guys, you lied about Tyler's guys here, if you lied about Morgan, if you lied about Jax, if you lied about Warren, we're going to get you. And you're going to be hauled into court. You're going to be held accountable. And it's going to be very painful. And what I would say to the people who have done that is, now's your chance. If you want to apologize and retract before you find yourself in court, you should probably do that now. Because if you don't do that, once you're in court, now you just can't leave. You won't be able to get out of it. And we're not going to name names because there's some other folks who are doing that, and we want to be better than that. And I want to emphasize this, right? We're not here to guess. We're not here to speculate. We're only going to deal in facts, right? And here's the most important thing, right? We don't know how Nolan Wells died. No one here is saying we know. But what we do know is Morgan, Jax, and Warren had nothing whatsoever to do with Nolan Wells' death. And that's what's important. And unfortunately, because there are people who want to divide a town and come in from the outside and tell people what to think and pit neighbor against neighbor, it compounds the tragedy. It magnifies the tragedy. And I just want to say this. Here's why it's an even bigger tragedy. Because my friends here, Morgan, Jax, and Warren, these guys are not just the finest that Ocean Springs has to offer, finest that Mississippi has to offer. These are the finest young men that America has to offer. These are, really great people. And Tyler actually taught me, good Ocean Springs people. That was one of the first things I heard, when I got here. So I'll just say that. They're good Ocean Springs people.
Sorry to interrupt. I know you're enjoying this incredible interview. Make sure you hit the like and subscribe button and also join our membership program. Let's get back to the interview. And how confident are you? Because you just met these young men more recently. And are you confident that these young men had nothing to do with it?
Confidence not a strong enough word. In fact, beyond a reasonable doubt is not strong enough. There's a 0% chance that they did anything wrong. So this is not 90%. It's not 99%. It's not 99.9999. There's no decimals. There's no anything. It's 100%. 100.000%. Nothing. They did nothing wrong. And that's the problem for our opponents here, who have ruined their lives, dragged them through the mud, and attacked them. You don't get to lie. We have the First Amendment. We love our First Amendment, but you don't get to lie and hurt people. You want to lie and it doesn't hurt people? Fine. You lie and you hurt people. That's why we have defamation. And that's what this is about. So I just want to emphasize this in the strongest possible terms. Zero wrongdoing. Completely innocent. Totally innocent. And categorically innocent.
And you guys have had experiences with either people threatening you online. I know that, Warren, we talked about this before. And we talked a little, or at least spoke a little bit about when you go out, you guys are getting accosted by people. Can you give us an example of, or at least tell the audience an example of an incident where you guys may have been accosted? Or what does that look like when you go out? People threaten you with weapons, or people trying to physically harm you, or people having to be restrained? What kind of engagement is happening when you guys go out?
We went to a restaurant, a couple of buddies of mine, and when we were, I wouldn't say threatening with weapons or anything, but I felt, and I know my friends felt, threat for our lives. I mean, I don't think there was like a fear factor, but at the same time, like it's awkward in public, like I stated, like when we have to talk about these things. But we went to a restaurant and someone came up to me and was like, "Is this you?" And I was kind of like shaken up about it. Well, at first she asked like my name and like all these questions, and I was like, okay, whatever, she's just coming up to talk. Well, then she came up to me again and showed me our first interview and was like, "Are you sure this isn't you?" And I was like, "Well, yeah, that's me, like obviously." And she kind of just, I looked at my buddy and I was like, "Yeah, we're leaving, like close everything out, like we're going." And I left, and there was an altercation after I left with some of my buddies that weren't involved in this at all. And they told my friends that they were going to kill them and they wanted to fight and all this like crazy stuff. I mean, I wasn't there, but my friends told me this, that what the people were saying to them was like totally just crazy. Like, I mean, there was people like that were, outside of this telling us like, "Hey, you need to leave before something happens, because I know what could go down right now. And like, I know that these people are crazy." So, I mean, we all felt, we were kind of shaken up about that. It was weird because it was our first encounter as a group. And I think it's also like just crazy that people will like look at you in the eye and tell you they'll kill you because they believe you killed your best friend and you have nothing to do with it.
And Morgan and Jax, were you guys there?
Yes, we were there.
I was there.
I didn't hear the part where they said they were going to kill him and stuff, but I did hear whenever she came up to him originally, she was like, "Hey, you have like TikTok or anything like that? Your face looks really familiar." And he was like, "No, I don't have TikTok, anything like that." And she was like, "Oh, okay." And then walked off and then came back with, like you said, the first interview on her phone. and showing him. She was like, so this isn't you. Either you have a doppelganger or this is you. And he was like, well, yeah, that's me. And then we got the check and we bounced and we were waiting outside for everybody else to get out of there. And while we're waiting outside is whenever some of our other buddies that aren't even on social media that we were just there with was getting told that other people were going to kill them and all that kind of stuff.
So how did that make you guys feel did you think they were serious? Did you think it was just people trying to make a name for themselves by confronting you in front of others? Like, what was your take on that, Morgan?
I think it was just like, I was in the general area of where one of our buddies was, where this altercation happened. And I actually got into a conversation with a fellow next to me that wasn't even involved. And he told me straight up, he was like, if I was y'all right now, I would leave before y'all get hurt. Y'all need to leave right now. I'm just watching out for y'all and making sure y'all are safe. And I mean, I wouldn't say that those people would have physically done something in that moment, but I think they were playing almost like a mental game, like just to get into your head and just almost like make yourself like just think these things that obviously are not true.
If you can go back to the very beginning of this, how do you think this should have played out? Because I always question in my mind that when I go back, I look at what happened, I look at the initial stories with Nolan, and you guys knew him, right? I didn't know him. I know none of you guys. I just had a chance to meet you guys more recently. But how do you think this should have gone? If you could control the environment, Nolan is found deceased. How do you guys think that this should have been put out to the world?
So first off, I wish that none of this would ever happen. I wish Nolan could still be here with us today. And I wish that, like I said, none of this would ever happen. Like I wish that all this could be erased and Nolan could be here tomorrow. I mean, that's more than anything. But other than that, I feel like his mom blasting us on social media from the get-go, saying that he was out there with Warren and another guy. That's where it first started to take off. And then also the fact that she posted a picture of me and Morgan and another guy and Nolan on the boat together, blasting that out there, pushing this narrative, kind of, I guess. I wish that would have never happened either. And I don't think if those would have never happened, a lot of this stuff wouldn't have been as viral or gone all over the country at this point. I mean, this is a countrywide news story that is just blown out of proportion. And the fact that it was our best friend and it's not what people are saying it is what hurts the most. I mean, that was our brother. I mean, straight up. That's what I told his dad the night that he came over to my house. He was like, blah, blah, saying something. I was like, dude, that was my brother. Like, and you know that. He knows that. We were picking him up every single day. He never drove. I can't tell you how many times I pulled up in his driveway and picked him up. And it wasn't him asking. It was just because that's what we did. We just picked up Nolan all the time. That's how he, came about to all the stuff that we were going to. We'd go and pick him up. That's how much we like to be around him. We would do stuff like that all the time,
Well, first off, like, I wish we would have never, like, I think about this every day. Like, I wish we would have never went out on the 4th of July because I know this wouldn't have happened. Nolan wouldn't be gone. And, like, it's really hard to think about because it's like, I wish I would have done this different or I wish I would have done that different because now one of my brothers passed away. But I think from the beginning, I'm glad that I called the Coast Guard and I'm glad that we came together as a group. Even from the first day when people started texting us things, saying, crazy things. But I wish it wouldn't have been reported as some type of race thing. I think it's really bad that, like, people are pushing the narrative of, oh, this is a race thing. Well, obviously it's not. I mean, this is like a brother to us. I mean, Nolan's no other no different than anyone else in our group. And I just wish this wasn't pushed on the media as, oh, this is a bunch of white guys that killed a black guy, or this is, like in the beginning it was like 4 guys went to a stranded island and dumped Nolan at the island and just left him there. Like even from the beginning, it was just like this thing, and no one had facts, and they were just pushing this horrible narrative, all lies about everyone, and it's sick. So I wish that would have been completely different. I'm glad I called the Coast Guard. I'm glad I made the first contact within all of this. I'm glad I was the first one that called Christine Wells that night and told her that we haven't heard from her son. And I'm glad that I did all of that, but I hate the way this has been perceived by the media and portrayed. This has like been absolutely horrible with the way and the things that they've said to us and done. But other than that, I mean, there's not much I would change from my point of view and my friend's point of view. I think we did everything right, and I know we did nothing wrong.
I also want to say, I think it's so criminal that they took something so anti-racist and flipped it into something super racist. Like they took, this is the definition of anti-racism. I mean, that we did not look at Nolan any different than I looked at him, or even you. You know, this is literally our brother. I mean, like we stated, we did not treat him any different. We didn't treat Trayson any different. We don't treat Trayson any different. And they just flipped it. And I just think that is so wild that they're pushing this thing that they're saying, oh, they want to end racism and all this stuff. Well, they're the one pushing it. They're pushing the racism.
Most beautiful places in the country. And there is just no question. The death of Nolan Wells is a horrendous tragedy. But for the tragedy to then be magnified after his death for no reason other than profit is a disgrace, or what we would call a shanda. And I had the opportunity to go to Horn Island today with Tyler and Warren and Jax. And a lot of people who have been sucking up way more oxygen than they're entitled to have not been to the island. I'm willing to bet that a lot of the hustlers and profiteers and liars have not been to that island. And you have to go to that island. And being at the island today was revelatory. It was really illuminating. It's a very dynamic marine environment, first of all. But when you go to the island, you see instantly that what some people want to be true, what they wish to be true, they're trying to wish it to be true. They're trying to make it true through their lies. It's actually not possible. It is a very, very long and narrow barrier island. It's basically very low sand dunes. And in the particular part of the island that we're dealing with, there are no trees. There's hardly any foliage, hardly any tree cover, hardly any plants. And it's wide open. And on July 4th, there were thousands of people there. There is no possible way that anybody could have committed a murder in broad daylight on a barren, windswept island that is narrow and was just swamped with people that day in broad daylight. It's just not possible given the natural environment there. And that leads me to the next point, which is this. Once you know what the timeline is, when you combine the timeline with the actual dynamics of the island itself, all of the lies completely unravel because it isn't possible, and here's why. Morgan, Warren, and Jax left the island at about 4:30 p.m. That's it. They were gone. That is not open for debate. So that's a fact. They were gone. And at that time, Nolan Wells was still alive. Now, I'm not going to name them out of respect for their privacy, but just as one example, there are 2 very fine, upstanding members of the Ocean Springs community who saw Nolan Wells at about 10 minutes to 6 p.m. So about an hour and a half after these fine young men had left the island. They were gone, departed. Nolan Wells was alive. And these two witnesses, two very reliable, very credible, and very upstanding members of the community, they saw Nolan. And they've known Nolan for years. There's no chance that they made a mistake. And by the way, this can be corroborated through other evidence, other eyewitness accounts. And that's the end of it right there. And that's before we get into everything else about the situation.
And when I look at this, I feel like there's levels of defamation and areas of defamation. And I'm not going to speak on your behalf because this is y'all's story to tell, your story to litigate. But which areas are the most egregious that you are going to go after, or that you guys think also are areas where people have taken this situation and clearly lied to the public? One being the phone call. What is your thoughts on that phone call to Cito? Some people have gone out and done enhancements to the audio, and in doing that, created a transcript manually. It doesn't appear that the transcript was derived from an automated system or have any, in my opinion, real integrity with it. What are your thoughts, first, you guys, on the audio, and then I'll get to you, Ed, on could that be a defamatory area the way it was produced? So what do you guys think about that audio?
Now let's go back to the beginning, because to understand what you just heard, you need the timeline it's built on. Start with the island. Almost nobody arguing about this case has actually stood on it. Horn Island isn't a destination. It's a ribbon of sand roughly 10 miles off the Mississippi coast, part of the Gulf Islands National Seashore. Low dunes, open water on both sides, no residents, no roads, no cell service worth trusting. And one feature shapes everything that follows. You cannot walk off it. You arrive by boat, and you leave by boat, or you don't leave. On the 4th of July, it fills with people who ride out in the morning and ride back before dark for exactly that reason. Which means when a boat leaves without you, your options have just narrowed to whoever else is still floating offshore. Sometime that afternoon, water started coming into the boat. The bilge pump, the mechanism that clears water out of a hull, quit. 10 miles from shore, that's not an inconvenience. That's a countdown. Someone in the group called Cito, a private towing service. Here's what later reporting revealed. Cito never towed them. A boat anchored nearby pulled them instead, and the group eventually got their engine running and brought themselves back in. They left at approximately 4:30 in the afternoon. Nolan wasn't with them. Warren Hudson has said publicly that Nolan was asked more than once to get on that boat and turned it down, planning to catch a ride back later with a different group. The boat reached the mainland. Nolan didn't. His mother reported him missing that night. What followed wasn't a small search. 4 agencies, the Jackson County Sheriff's Office, the Coast Guard, the Mississippi Department of Marine Resources, and the National Park Service, worked the island and the water around it with aircraft, vessels, and ground teams in July heat. 2 days, nothing. And that's the first strange detail in this case. On a strip of sand with no tree cover, no structures, and nowhere to conceal anything, 4 agencies searched for 48 hours and found nothing at all, until the morning of July 6th, when a United States park ranger walked the northwestern tip and found a body in the water, near the same stretch where Nolan had last been seen alive. Investigators said early on they'd found no signs of foul play and that drowning was suspected. 6 weeks later, no cause of death has been publicly determined. No manner of death has been publicly determined. Nobody has been arrested. No agency has named a single suspect, which leaves a window. It opens at 4:30 on July 4th, when a boat pulls away and leaves a teenager standing on the sand. It closes somewhere before a ranger walks that northwestern tip 2 mornings later. Whatever happened to Nolan Wells happened inside that window, and for 6 weeks, nobody has been able to account for a minute of it. Then, in that room in Ocean Springs, someone said he could account for the first 90. The man sitting beside Warren Hudson, Jax Patalo, and Morgan Seymour was Edward Andrew Paltzik, a defamation lawyer who has represented Donald Trump in high-profile litigation against major media organizations, and who had joined their legal team days earlier alongside local counsel J. Tyler Cox. That distinction matters more than most coverage has acknowledged. Palcic isn't criminal defense counsel. There's no charge to defend against. He's there because he intends to sue people. On camera, he warned that anyone who lied about his clients would be dragged into court, and that anyone wanting to retract should do it before that happened. He named no targets. He also said, plainly, that he doesn't know how Nolan Wells died, and that nobody in that room was claiming to. Then he laid out a timeline. Hudson, Patalo, and Seymour left at approximately 4:30. He called that a fact, not open for debate. And at that moment, he said, Nolan Wells was alive. Two people from the Ocean Springs community, according to Palcic, saw Nolan at roughly 10 minutes to 6 that evening, 90 minutes after the boat was gone. He called them reliable, credible, upstanding. He said they'd known Nolan for years, and there was no chance of mistaken identity. He said other evidence and other eyewitness accounts could back it up. And then he declined to name them, citing their privacy. Sit with what that claim would do. This entire national conversation has been built around one question. What happened to Nolan in the hours after his friends pulled away? If two credible people watched him alive at 5:50, that question stops applying to the three men on that boat entirely. They're already on the water. The window closes behind them. Now, a claim that consequential either holds up or it doesn't. So let's do what nobody in that room did. Take it apart. Start with the people. It needs two individuals who were physically standing on Horn Island that afternoon, close enough to identify someone they'd known for years. Fine, thousands of people were out there. Then it needs time, not an estimate, a reasonably fixed time, because 90 minutes is the entire load-bearing weight of this argument. Slide that sighting an hour in either direction and it stops doing anything. And then the hardest requirement, they had to have told investigators. Which raises the question people have been shouting about online for 3 days. If two credible witnesses watched Nolan alive at 5:50 on the 4th of July, where have they been for 6 weeks? Palcic has an answer to that, and it's more reasonable than his critics allow. He said his team interviewed witnesses, gathered its own evidence, and turned all of it over to authorities. If that's true, those statements aren't missing. They may be sitting inside the same sealed file as everything else in this case, which would mean the silence isn't suspicious at all. It's just procedure. And here's the part that should give even the skeptics pause. Palcic wasn't the first person to say this. Back in late July, weeks before he was hired, TMZ reported that sources with direct knowledge of the investigation said authorities already had evidence placing Nolan on the island after the boat departed. According to that reporting, at least two witnesses interviewed by law enforcement said the same thing. The same outlet published video it reported shows Nolan wasn't aboard the boat while it was being towed. No agency has confirmed any of this on the record. The witnesses still have no names, but two separate sources, weeks apart, with no apparent connection, pointing at the same conclusion. That's not something to wave away. And then there's a third piece that makes the whole thing tighter, not looser. The working report compiled by the United Cajun Navy references video from around 5 in the afternoon showing a fight involving other people on the island, and notes a witness account that by 7:30 that evening, Nolan was nowhere in sight. That doesn't contradict a sighting at 5:50. It does something more unsettling. It squeezes the window down to roughly 90 minutes. 3 days before that interview, Palcic went out to the island himself. On August 7th, he and Cox traveled to Horn Island with Hudson and Patalo, spending about 3 hours there. Seymour didn't go. Palcic came back with a geography argument, and he built it carefully, a long, narrow barrier strip, low dunes. In the section that matters, no trees, almost no foliage, sight lines running the full length of it. Thousands of people out there that day. His conclusion was absolute. There is no way anyone commits a killing in broad daylight on open ground that crowded, with nowhere to stand that isn't visible from somewhere else. On its own terms, that argument has real weight. There is nowhere to hide out there. But look closely at what it's answering. It's answering the theory that went viral in the first week, the one involving a public act of violence and a body left on a sandbar. That theory never came from an investigator, not the sheriff's office, not the district attorney, not the coroner, not the family's legal team. Ben Crump has never alleged a daylight killing. What the family has actually raised is narrower, and terrain can't touch it. An area of red discoloration in the deep tissue at the back of their son's head that remains unexplained. Portions of his neck, along with his lungs and throat, retained by the state and never released to the pathologist they hired, meaning that doctor could not rule out a neck injury as a contributing cause. Cause of death, undetermined. Manner of death, undetermined. Toxicology, still unreleased. An empty island tells you where a body couldn't have been hidden. It tells you nothing about how an 18-year-old ended up in the water, or what happened to him before he went in. That's what I meant at the top. The part that matters most wasn't in that interview. With a national audience watching and an attorney in the room, not one of those 4 questions came up. So that's where this stands tonight. A claim about 2 witnesses nobody has heard from. A geography argument aimed at an accusation no investigator ever made. And every document capable of settling any of it, sealed. If you want this case answered instead of argued about, subscribe to Case Desk and leave a like on this video. The day that grand jury convenes and those records finally open, we'll read through every line of it exactly as it comes.